Let's reveal the answer key, your case study, answer key, a key to a better understanding of the GTR method is here. A key to a better understanding of the GTR method is here. Welcome to your GTR answer key. In this episode, we're going to be focusing on the case study called Helping Anna Get Back into the Body. This was my fourth GTR session with Anna. In the previous 3 GTR sessions, we cleared some of the big traumatic memories from Anna's past, and as a result, Anna started to look, sound, and feel better. This fourth session with Anna was a good opportunity for me to slow the process down just a little bit and keep this one session lighter. I did this specifically through solidifying and connecting Anna with her body a little bit more. Anna is now taking better care of herself, which is amazing, but what I still need to do, well, one of the things that I still need to do is to help her solidify the connection with her body. And we have a specific process for this in the GTR method. It consists of several steps, but the first one is always teaching your client how to drop safely into the body. And hence, that was the process that I focused on with Anna in this session, the process of dropping safely into the body. This case study reminds us of the importance of reflecting back to the client not just their progress in terms of cognitive and emotional shifts, but also their literally physical disposition and tiny changes in behavior that might seem insignificant. Someone who has spent a lot of time stuck in trauma responses, like Anna has, is likely to be so familiar with the way their body feels in that response that it actually feels like normal to them. It's their familiar baseline, and they may not even remember another reference point for feeling different in their past. In this session, for instance, I reflect back to Anna the physical changes that I'm noticing in her body. Her shoulders that aren't as tensed in the fight response as they used to be, her facial features being more relaxed, and also she has more color to her face and lips. I also help validate for Anna that little behavioral shifts, such as going to bed when she's tired or eating properly when she's hungry, and slowing down to rest, are not just coincidental, they tie into the trauma release that she has done. In this particular session, Anna brings up her delayed responses to stressors, such as feeling the impact of a very stressful event days afterwards, or sometimes not even recognizing that she's hungry until she actually starts eating. If we tend to disassociate from the body, it's common to zone out and not be able to connect with our physical and emotional needs. This is even more pronounced with a client stuck in the freeze response. In other words, it's not that Anna's body is not talking to her all the time through sensations and bodily inputs, but that Anna, not being in touch with her body often enough, is not noticing these messages coming from the body. This can easily lead people to push themselves to burnout, in that they don't recognize that they're exhausted or depleted. Because when we're frequently disconnected from the body, we literally can't feel it. Anna acknowledges that not only does she do this in relation to her trauma, it's also a pattern that she has learned growing up when she wasn't allowed to simply rest or do nothing. Not only that, Anna sees that there are other voices speaking to her and through her, sometimes taking the form of a harsh inner critic and saying things like she should be killed for certain mistakes. As she says, we often end up doing to ourselves what someone else did to us in our past without even consciously thinking about it. This perfectly encapsulates how patterns repeat and how our past programs us. Even when, on a rational level, we can understand that these patterns may not be healthy, they're often running on autopilot in the background. Now that Anna's awareness has deepened, she's starting to break out of this pattern and she's allowing herself to rest when she needs it. The pattern of not resting until the breaking point is a really important one to look at, given that Anna is mostly self employed. It's often even harder to set boundaries around work and rest when we're on our own and we're our own boss and there's no set start and end time to our day. One of our students said, "This case study reminds me of trauma survivors having their boundaries repeatedly violated. This creates a vicious circle that I think it's important to be aware of because it's so common for people to feel shame when they look back at an event and weren't able to really respond to the present moment. They were caught in freeze or another trauma response, and as a result, they didn't get their needs met or someone took advantage of them." Yes, if we tend to dissociate from the body, it's common to zone out. It's common to not be able to connect with our boundaries in the moment. We may not be able to state our needs and therefore ask for what we want, or not be able to say no, or respond to boundary violations in the way that would best protect us. Later on, when we get back in touch with our body, we may suddenly realize that we missed an opportunity or said something that we didn't mean. Perhaps we allowed someone to mistreat us or didn't stand up for ourselves. This can cause a kind of emotional recoil where we have an even more intense emotional reaction because now not only do we feel the true impact of what happened, but we also feel guilty, hurt, upset, or angry at our own lack of response. The intensity of these feelings on top of the event itself then makes it even more overwhelming to stay in the body, and it reinforces the pattern of disconnecting from it. This pattern might be particularly pronounced with people who have complex trauma in particular. All of this is also related to self care. In freeing up energy and shifting her emotional and cognitive states, caring for herself now seems doable for Anna. This is especially important to see for a highly cautious and guarded client like Anna, who is often skeptical of how much things are really working. But it's also just a generally good thing to point out to anyone. Self care is often portrayed as a basic skill that we just know how to do and that should always feel good. And we assume that if people aren't doing those things, they're lazy or not trying hard enough. In reality, basic self care is often not easy, and it can feel uncomfortable to look after ourselves or even bring up guilt, shame, and fear. This is one of the reasons why we incorporated a new module called Deep Care Module into the GTR training. It will serve you as practitioners to take really good care of yourself so that you can show up for your clients in the best way possible, but also to help you support your clients with their self care. Because sooner or later, the question of how they can take good care of themselves will come up. And as I mentioned, it's often assumed that self care is easy and that if one doesn't do it or if one doesn't engage in it, then there's a perfectly reasonable explanation, such as they're lazy or they just don't make time for it. In all truth, good self care needs a little bit of thought, it needs a little bit of strategy and planning, and the Deep Care module will help you with all of that. All right, what do we notice about this client in this particular session? Well, after a few sessions of deep GTR work, specifically 3 previous sessions before this one, Anna is no longer feeling as much contraction and constriction in her chest, and she's showing improvement in her overall physical state. She's generally more relaxed, her face and shoulders aren't as tense, she makes more eye contact, and she seems more vibrant. Now, as I notice these things, I check to see if Anna is also observing these changes, and she does. However, Anna's caution and vigilance that we've seen in her prior sessions come to the forefront quickly. She says she might be improving, and she hesitates to say anything definitively or to link feeling better to the trauma release work. She explores other possible explanations as well, such as being in a meditative state more often, sleeping and resting more, eating better, etc. All of this is, of course, playing a role, but Anna is only able to do all of these things now after she has freed up some energy through the trauma release. Anna is very aware that she's being cautious and she admits it. This is a positive sign, and it may be necessary later on to bring that awareness to her attention again. For instance, although skepticism and looking for other possible answers can certainly be a good trait to have, it can also lead to our mind drowning out the voice of intuition or being overly suspicious in a way that heightens anxiety. The reason why I wanted to bring Anna to realizing that she was only able to take better care of herself now that she has done some trauma release was not so much for her to acknowledge my work or anything similar. It was mostly to highlight the fact that her ability to take better care of herself wasn't just a coincidence. It was the consequence of the changes and of the work that she has done. And therefore, I was hoping to show her that there's a good degree of control that she has over herself, of her life, and of her overall well being. Anna moves slowly but surely. And she is a good example of how both the GTR protocols as well as the therapeutic relationship with the practitioner are both healing agents in their own right. And every time I watch this session with Anna, I think to myself, well, in this session, Anna is finally warming up to me. One of the themes that come up in this session is also how Anna is becoming aware of her boundaries. A sense of healthy boundaries is very often undermined in people who carry a lot of trauma. Therefore, seeing shifts in this area is also a sign of the client making progress in the de-traumatization process. For example, Anna is realizing that she often doesn't take care of herself. Everyone comes first before her, and this causes a lack of balance and reciprocity in her relationship dynamics. Now that Anna has started to tend to her needs more by giving herself adequate rest, food, and care, she is able to better perceive when others are not giving much back to her. Anna's mother seems to be wanting a lot of attention and care from her, and yet Anna has many memories of needing this from her mother and not receiving it. For example, her mother didn't want Anna staying at her house when she was in dire physical condition and needed to be closer to a hospital. Anna can see this and she realizes that she can't currently give to her mother in that way. She needs to pull her energy inward to care for herself right now. This awareness of when there's an imbalance in relationships will be a useful reference point for Anna later on as she opens up more to other people and forms friendships or starts dating. The more she shows herself care and respect, the more she'll be able to discern when others aren't doing the same and she can avoid getting into draining one-sided dynamics with people. When Anna does the dropping safely into the body exercise, she gains even more important information about her body and how it communicates whether something is good for her or not. Anna's ankle is a good feeling place, and this good feeling has spaciousness, openness, smoothness, and empty space associated with it. Anna connected with a feeling of spaciousness when she started heading into the neutral zone, and she also sees in another case study that focusing on spaciousness deepens her breathing. And this, by the way, is in one of the sessions that are about to follow this one. This feeling of spaciousness is a good indicator of when she's generally feeling good or safe. Anna feels some pain and discomfort in her knee, and this is represented in her mind as smallness and constriction. Her knee feels dense, small, full, and hard, and she repeatedly mentions the idea of being forced. It's like being pressed into a small space or being forced to be in this small place. Now, one thing to notice is that constriction is a sign of Anna not being or not feeling okay. And this is noticeable in her breathing as well, which she often has trouble with. It's interesting to note that spaciousness versus feeling forced into a position correlates with Anna's values and some of her past experiences. She has said that she highly values freedom, and some of her deep trauma involved feeling trapped and like choice was being taken away from her. Now, one of the typical challenges, and the most common one, in fact, that comes with this case study is just how to go about doing the dropping safely into the body process with the client. If this is completely new to you, it's of course advised that you practice on yourself first and then maybe with someone else. The important thing to understand is that when it comes to helping the client befriend their body, number one, it's not something that happens overnight. We need a series or a sequence of steps that build upon one another. And the dropping safely into the body process happens to be the first step in that sequence. The reason why dropping safely into the body is the very first step and why it's also an inevitable step before we go into the body intuition processes is because it allows the client to experiment with what it feels like when they stay in the body for prolonged periods of time. With trauma, there is this tendency to be in and out of the body, and oftentimes it's more time spent in being out of the body rather than in it. Dropping safely into the body is a process that allows the client to learn and experience kinesthetically that it can be safe to stay in the body for these prolonged periods of time, and that they can sit out or wait out for the discomfort to pass without leaving the body as the only strategy. Once they have cultivated this ability to stay in the body for a little bit more time, then they're ready to activate their body intuition in its different parts. Wonderful. I hope all of these learnings deepened your understanding of the GTR method and, of course, of this particular case study as well. I'm going to bring this episode of your GTR Answer Key to an end now, and I'll be looking forward to connecting with you again very soon. Bye for now.